I was drowning in the water, but you came and pulled me up so I could breathe.
Welcome to Rescued for Women, where you will be encouraged as women share stories of how their messes were turned into messages of hope. Welcome to Rescued for Women. We are so glad that you joined us today. We have the.
This is good though. See,
This is what you expected last week.
No, but this is what I think they want.
Mm-hmm.
We just take a sip.
Okay.
We'll start from
Are we
here.
ready? We'll start over.
Yes.
Ready? Okay. Welcome to Rescued for Women. I'm so glad you joined us today. I am Julie Godwin, and
I am Megan Beatty.
Megan is a dear friend of mine, and we'll tell you a little bit about how this got started. Megan, do you want to share what your dream was, your vision was a few months ago before COVID hit and we had to, kind of not do things in big numbers? Yeah.
I have a very interesting story, and Julie and I reconnected, but I am a hairstylist, and I've had a lot of females sit in my chair and not have the ability to be vulnerable and be transparent and open about their stories or struggles that they're going through. So we collaborated and kind of
came up with Rescued for Women on YouTube. Actually, we both have the same passion. We want to encourage and inspire women, and we know that women love stories. I mean, who doesn't love a good story? And all women have one, right?
Yes, we all have one.
And
that is, I think, the biggest thing. Do not feel shame for your story, because it's not who you are, but it's a part of your journey.
Sure, yeah. And a lot of times we carry some of the yucky parts of our story and we hesitate to share it, but the reality is, for a lot of women, we have come out of yuck and messy situations, and God has done miraculous and wonderful things, and we now have a message of hope to share. And so that's what Megan and I are going to do. She's going to share her story first, and then I think the next time I'll be sharing mine, and eventually we'll have other women on here sharing their story as well. And Megan, do you want to get started and just talk to me a little bit about where you were maybe 2 years ago, or even a little further back? How were you raised, and what were your thoughts about God? So before you do, just want to say this little disclaimer. Maybe you're here, you've joined us, and you're thinking, well, I don't really believe in God. That's okay. I really hope you stick with us, because we've been in that place. I know that I used to be agnostic for many years, and I kind of felt like tried the whole God thing and it didn't work. So maybe that's you. Just hang in there and be patient. And, we've definitely got something we want to share with you as well. So go ahead, Megan, take us back a little bit and tell us a little bit about your journey.
I'll kick this off. I'm 37 years old, and I grew up in Hanover, Pennsylvania, and had my mother and my father in the household, went to church every Sunday, believed in God. The words that I didn't would never come out of my mouth. Never felt that I didn't. I had no relationship with him whatsoever. And I think I got stuck in the rut of, you get dressed, you go Sunday. I felt cleansed and open and vulnerable, but it always just ended on like Sunday evening when Monday was fast approaching, and the week would come, and that was my relationship with him in my head, that I thought, this is just what it is. And like Julie said, I've tried the God thing before, and it just didn't click. And I did not realize that he had his hand reaching down to me the entire time, but I needed to be ready to reach up and grab it. So fast forward, I was in a very yucky divorce, was with my ex-husband. We had 2 beautiful little girls who are currently 7 and 12. Nasty back and forth court situation. Kind of go into elaborate that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
So they moved to Florida. I had left the business that we had together. I'm a hairstylist, and really hit a rock bottom that I think in my head, my whole life, I was the yes girl and very vulnerable, always the people pleaser. And I hit this rock bottom that I felt so much shame so much. I felt totally depreciated, totally just exhausted mentally, physically, financially, all the way around. And I was exhausted. And when my children had relocated with my ex-husband, it was not at a place where I was okay giving them away.
Right.
But I think the perception of other people were so used to the pressure of, she's perfect, I live in a square, she doesn't make bad decisions. So I felt like I was letting so many people down, but the only person I was letting down was myself and God, because I was not living like you say the godly way, or doing the transformation or changes or commitments to Him that a woman of faith would. And I was very, very lost. So take that vulnerability. My relationship with my children is very strained at that point, and they're 1,200 miles away. So my rock bottom was not far off.
Sure.
I think it was the inevitable, and I had lived, like I said, a long time in that perfect square of the idealism of a perfect household, living the rules, mastering the rules, and just kind of had not a wild moment, but I was shedding and letting all of that go. But had I known in hindsight in the process what I would find, fast forward 5 years later, is priceless. But still very tense situation with my children. Every single day I'm at a point where I have let it in God's hands. But I've ended the court situation. Today I will add a side note. Pennsylvania has made a parental alienation bill that will hopefully be passed with legislature, hopefully with voting, that will prevent situations like this from happening, because it is about the children. And I think once you go through the yuck, the message at the end is divorce is awful, it's horrible, but if you keep God as your forefront and your center, sometimes it is the inevitable, but children get wrapped up in it, and it really just is about them. So that was about November 2015.
Okay.
When I met
so
my
can
husband.
I interject here
Sure.
and ask you? So you said that you had, you talked about parent alienation.
Yes.
Explain parent alienation to me and to our audience.
Sure.
What is that, and what does that look like for you?
Sure. Parental alienation is a custodial situation, domestics, you're in court, child support, visiting custody schedules, the back and forth. It is basically where the other parent is either consciously or unconsciously building this mental picture without you in it. And their everyday becomes typical for them, but very atypical for the other parent, where you almost are just eventually excluded. And I had traveled and made trips and sacrificed, and it wasn't enough. And that is kind of where I started to get exhausted mentally.
Yeah.
Because
What mother wouldn't?
well, it's heartbreaking, because I think a lot of women looked at me and they were like, well, how can she be okay with not having her girls? Or what did she do?
Yeah.
That was the classic tagline.
Yeah, I can imagine as a mom,
The
they're
pressure,
thinking,
and I did
how does a mom
nothing.
lose their child?
I
You
made
know?
a decision to allow them to ride horses because I had to make a selfish decision for them, to allow them to not have another part of them taken away that they would lose within our divorce.
And little did you know that it would lead to you losing them altogether and being alienated out of their life.
And it is a very scary situation looking back, because it was happening moment by moment, but you just think, well, this could never happen to me. Or, to go through life, now that I have another daughter, but I'm really good at the parenting thing and being a mom. It's a wonderful gift. I think it's a beautiful blessing, no matter how they get here. But it's a void in your heart that I thank God that I found God, because it is a void that only He can fill and keep me focused. And I think a lot of people, when they hear my story, they understand. But if you don't hear my story, like I said, it's the, what did you do? There was not abuse, there was not drugs, there was not any kind of reason drinking while driving, all these reasons that can lead to you losing your children. But I will say the court system, they are much more forgivable for those situations because, and I can say this firsthand, sitting in courtroom after courtroom, watching this happen, and they believe in reunification when, someone with an addiction gets clean or gets sober. And here I sat, and I did feel very vulnerable at those moments because I don't even have a speeding ticket. Mm-hmm. And how could I not have, I carried these babies. So many people have the same story. Mm-hmm. But how could you find that it was not okay? And I'm talking thousands and thousands of dollars, hours and countless hours with lawyers and judges.
And do you think some of that came down to which one of you maybe had a little more money to put
Oh, it is. It's a proven, Erasing Families it's on Tubi.
Okay.
It's a wonderful series that explains parental alienation, and they interview the children and how this long-lasting effect is on children.
Okay.
And it is
Erasing Families.
It is a money pit 101, and the only country that's doing it well is Sweden. They believe if you get divorced, you instantly get 50-50 custody, and the only way it goes into the court system or child support is involved is if there is a risk of harm to the child.
Yes.
So it eliminates that emotional struggle for the children.
Wow.
But while they were going through their emotional struggle 1,200 miles away, I was here trying to pick up the pieces, which you'll hear in my story kept crumbling and crumbling. And
so you're
crumbling.
in this place at that point
It was
where
yucky.
you feel a little hopeless.
100%.
You're broken.
100%.
You end up meeting people and going down
I was
a
at
path
bars
that wasn't
and
good.
drinking and
Right.
just excessive that I never had done before. And I think a lot of people were looking at me like, oh, she's losing it, or she's going through a wild phase.
And you probably were losing it a little.
Oh, I was totally
Yeah.
losing it, but I was losing it. I was very alone. But I also think a lot of people go through that wild phase in their 18 to 25,
20s, yeah,
but
right.
mine was in my 30s, so I think I was front and center.
Okay.
Social media we have now, posting pictures tagged here. So it seemed, I think, a lot worse
Because everyone
visually.
could see it.
Yes.
It was out there for
100%.
everyone to see. So
But
then you found yourself in bad relationships.
Yes, I was
And
in
tell me a
horrible
little bit about
relationships. I didn't do a lot of dating in high school. When my ex-husband and I got married, it was not a shock to a ton of people, but to some it was, I just didn't have, I was focused. I wanted to be a hairstylist. I traveled all over the world, and having children wasn't really in my radar, but I wasn't ruling it out either. But so when I was in these relationships, I met my now husband in a bar, and our paths never would have crossed. He is from complete different side of the railroad tracks, and nothing wrong with that. Opposites attract. But we both were at a very, very broken, vulnerable phase when we got together.
Okay. And then you had times during that period of time between, your ex and you splitting ways, and you're going through the parent alienation, and then you're meeting people, and you found yourself in abusive situations.
I did.
That were very scary.
Yes, I did.
And you were struggling to pull out of that. And that is the point in time, I think, when we sort
Connected.
Well, I think we parted ways at that time.
Julie was one of my clients, and she was one of many that love me from afar kind of thing, because I couldn't love myself enough to even get out of my yuck.
Yeah.
But I did not have God in my life whatsoever. Not a prayer, nothing. I think I came accustomed to the scream in the pillow because it was the only thing that felt good, and numbing my pain that I didn't even really realize how intense was, because I never gave myself enough time to feel.
Yeah. So as your client, from my perspective, what I saw every time I would sit in your chair is someone who was broken and lost and needed rescued.
My heart was hurting, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I would pray for you.
But you could
all
see
the
it in my
time.
eyes. Anybody that knows me knows everything about me you can see from my eyes. And they were, I'd say, up until probably when we reconnected a year and a half ago, I had really struggled with direction and, okay, today's a new day. I'm gonna try. Like Julie said, I found myself in in abusive situations, and I want to be able to relate to you because it's easy to sit and say how great my life was and how it is now, you know, comparison, but it was a very bad situation that led to, I want you to know that I can relate to you. Black eyes, bruises, verbal altercations. I mean, it was not a part. Yes, it was not a part of my life that I don't mind reliving because I'm not there anymore. But I do think it's so important to talk about because I would never want anyone else's daughter to have to go through that, or you to have to go through that alone. I was so alone.
Yeah, very much alone. And so during that time, and we weren't, you know, I just sort of said, you know, when at some point I believed we would reconnect, but it just couldn't be then because
it was hard. I wasn't reliable.
No,
for my clients or myself.
I'm fishing, like I almost don't want to say it because I feel about saying it, but that's what it was. It was an unreliability.
100%.
And so I'm the mom of 8, and I'm trying to, you know, show up for an appointment, and Megan might not have been there because
or I was running late, or I was hungover, or you know, or I was so exhausted because I cried the night before. Every excuse under the sun, I've given them, I've used them, and it's.
Yeah.
It was
and
a
then,
yucky
so
point.
What did we do? So I guess it was when you got pregnant with Callie, I reached out to you.
Well, right before that, my husband and I made this, either we're in this or we're not. And when I tell you, and I have his full disclosure for saying this, within my marriage, we have experienced infidelity, we've experienced altercations, we've experienced intense conversations, and it was the moment we sat down, it was either we're in this for the long haul or I can't do this anymore. And we both had to get right. Now, Julie will attest to this also. I struggle still with the fact that my spiritual journey is not up to par with his as far as how far or not that he's come.
So you're not in the same place spiritually, but that's...
But you can't. Yeah. It's your journey. It's not his and my. It's my journey to take the lead, and I'm loving finding that. It's huge. Yeah. It's a feeling that's almost indescribable. Like I can't even describe it.
Yeah.
But I got pregnant, terrified. We weren't planning a child.
Sure.
It was not the moment, have a baby, she'll save everything. It had nothing to do with that. And I have to say, in the visual, she was the only thing we did right that came to God's timing.
Yeah.
So, and I also experienced infertility. Okay. I had a really hard time getting pregnant. So when I got pregnant with her, it was almost like, you can't tell me there's not a God, because out of my entire marriage, she was the only thing that we did in right timing, because we did everything completely backwards except her. So I get pregnant, I put the news on Facebook, Julie messaged and said, if you ever are looking for a sitter. She meant more like a Saturday night dinner date, and I turned it into, oh my goodness, I could not think of a better female figure to help me raise my daughter. And her children are, we just kind of fit in like a perfect shoe fit. And it's just been, that was when we reconnected.
Yeah. And
having Callie was complete perfect timing. My girls in Florida have not met her yet. So when I said we still strain in that relationship department, but I have communication with them. But I just did. I email my ex-husband every week and we communicate. My husband and I have this amazing communication of the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between. But we talk about everything. But like I said, I'm really getting good at this parenting thing, and sometimes it takes a little longer than others, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. So this is when, I guess, when you and I reconnected, and Callie is on the scene, and we've had Callie since she was, oh goodness,
7 days old.
7 days old, yeah.
Little peanut.
Precious little girl. She's beautiful. But so it was during this time, Megan, you would come to the house and we would just have conversations, and oftentimes those conversations would land on godly things that had to do with God. And so what was going on in your head at that point? Like, is this when you you make a switch and you.
I don't want to say a switch. I think he was drawing us together because he almost knew that I could handle it. And before I couldn't handle it because I couldn't get out of my own way. I'm sure you feel like that at certain times in your life. You might feel like that now. But it was almost like his perfect timing. I remember, like it was yesterday, we were standing on your front porch and I started sobbing because I wanted, jealousy is not a great thing, but I was jealous of the relationship that Julie had with God and her spiritual walk and how positive, and even in awful, horrible things. And I have experienced so many by your side, loss, internal struggles back and forth. We've talked about it. We came back together, but seeing the grace that God gives her to be able to walk this journey through those situations gave me this eye-opening experience that I wanted that too, and at any cost. And I think that's where I got, where it was, I did. It was almost, it's like it gives me goosebumps because it was this moment because it just happened. And it was like, I do get emotional, but it was like, he's there. He never left me, but it was like this light bulb just clicked, like it was that easy.
So you just let go.
I did.
And you gave
I gave everything to him. My child, my marriage, my ships, relationships, friendships, my marriage, my family, all of it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't, when the burden of living and breathing was becoming exhausting, I never had a suicidal thought ever, even in my yuckiest moments. But I do know what it's like to wake up and pray to just not, because you don't know how. You see no light at the end of the tunnel. And the moment that I gave everything, every painful moment, all of it to him, everything became easy. Breathing became light. Seeing became beautiful. Like I found peace, and there is nothing, no one that will take that away from me ever again.
Yeah. And as you gave your life completely and totally over to God and asked him to basically be the Lord of your life, to be the king over you and to rule over you, and when you did that, like, it brought a peace. And did you lose anything? Like, I think sometimes people are afraid that when they give themselves to Christ, they're going to lose something. They're going to have to give things up. You know,
I think people look at it. I never was a big cursor. I feel that, yes, every now and again I curse. Do I still drink? I might have an occasional glass of wine here or there, but my husband and I, we've committed to the non-drinking bandwagon. It's been wonderful and beautiful in my marriage. I'm not a huge fan of bars anymore. I think that just happens with age. I think so many people think, oh, well, if I commit to God, I can't stay out late. I can't curse anymore. We all sin. And I think it was taking on that acceptance. It's okay for things to not be okay. And you don't have to be perfect.
Because God's got it.
Yes.
He covered it.
Yes.
He's got your back.
If you do something bad in his eyes, you pray about it and you pray for forgiveness. I had to forgive myself and allow him to forgive me. And I mean, it was, I forgive you. I take away these burdens that you have been carrying. I was infamous for packing that backpack or that satchel and throwing it over my shoulder, as heavy and as long as the scroll would go. But to give everything over to him, it was effortless, and I lost nothing. And any toxic relationship that I had, even within my own marriage, took it all.
It's gone.
And I just won't live there anymore. I can't live there. It's a part of me, but it's not who I am. And anybody that knows me, I had just dealt with this the other day. Someone from my past went while I was married to my husband. It was a toxic moment. And she has gotten married, moved on, sent me an apology letter. I don't even think I got to tell you this, but it was peaceful. And there are times that I would wonder, like, would this ever happen, within friendships that I thought I valued, that I thought were friendships. I was always took the great badge of I was a great friend. Until I realized, how could I be I wasn't even a good friend to myself. How can they like me if I don't even like me? But I couldn't like me because I didn't even know who I was.
Yeah.
And I always took pride, and I know who I am, and I know where I'm going. I had no clue who I was, and I also had no clue where I was going.
Yeah.
But now it's my direction is effortless because God's got me. And I know it might sound cliche, I'm telling you. And
But he's only got you because you gave yourself to him.
100%. I was just going to say, Julie can tell, she can tell all of you that I wasn't, even while pregnant, I wasn't on this journey yet. I was getting closer, and I think God knew. Oh, well, he did. It's not I think. He definitely did. Or this wouldn't have happened. And yes, it is about timing, but it was I give it all to him, because without him, I wouldn't be sitting here.
So, and what better timing, 2020.
Whew.
What a year, right?
I needed to find him, because if I didn't have Callie and I didn't have him and I didn't have Julie, I'm not sure where I would be, because I do. I have so many friends, so many clients. 2020, I mean, it's been a disaster for so many around this world. But I can say, and this has nothing to do with finances, I think we've all kind of hit a rock bottom during 2020. It was one of the best years of my life. And
amazing. And so you're sitting here, I'm just thinking, like, not only did you not lose anything, but you gained so much. And did your circumstance completely change, like snap overnight?
Completely
but did
overnight.
Your circumstance?
No.
So your heart did.
My heart
your
changed.
Peace changed. Like all of that changed. But did because you still have yucky stuff.
Well, I think everyone was quick to say, oh, I lost my job, or I was sick, or I lost someone due to loss. Within the pandemic when it started, I had Callie in November of 19 and had, I think a week and a half maternity leave. Fast forward to March and the world stopped. But as a mother, God gave me this tool. Like, okay, you didn't have maternity leave. Now you have it. And I didn't have it with my other girls, so that connection, I did not realize that is a priceless connection that a mother has with her child. And I didn't have it, but
you were able to see the positive.
March hit, we all got stuck at home, loss of income, all of it happened to us. My husband was graced by the hands of God to go and have the opportunity, to have a great opportunity to float our family financially, but I was able to dig deep. What other situation do you do, or do you have when you're forced to dig deep?
Yeah.
I was able to jump into a Bible study with Julie, learning myself, my direction, who I want to be within God's eyes, not so much Megan's in control, because we're not in control. But my whole life I had this fear of dying, and 2020 hit, and I think all of us took on this burden of, is this real? Or if it happens to me and I don't make it. But I had so much peace with living for the first time in my whole life.
Yeah, I love that, because God gives a peace that passes all understanding. That's what the scripture says. Yeah.
You can't describe it until you take it on.
Yeah.
And it is.
And when I ask you, like, did your circumstance change? Like, you still, a lot of times people will say, well, it's easy for her to feel peaceful. She's got, there's nothing negative in her life, but you still don't have your girls.
Well, and I don't have my girls. Pretty much lost my job within this pandemic. Not
so there
by
were still
choice.
yucky
So much
circumstances.
yuck.
But it didn't matter.
No, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It was almost like, you know what? Like, Meg, I have this. Like, if it's too heavy, Julie will tell you, like, I struggle with prayer. I need to get better at praying.
You always say that,
but at conversations, I talk to God when I'm driving. I talk to him while my clients are processing. Julie, she prays with me and over me a whole lot. But I'm working on that. But my circumstance, I can't even say. Like, it almost makes me speechless. My yuck didn't change, but I didn't have to control it anymore.
Right.
Because you can't.
You left it with Jesus.
You are directionless if you think that you can control this situation, because you cannot. And I've never taken the name tag of I'm a control freak. I'm a planner. I don't like being late. There are things within my marriage that drives me insane about my husband, but everything became easy, and I didn't worry about other people's choices or their actions or their delivery or their timing. It was finally about me. And it is easy to sit up here and say, but when I tell you, you were not alone. I did this alone. My friends that I had since 3rd grade, gone.
Yeah.
Cousins, aunts, gone. I mean, I literally, and there was so much, my mom and dad, now in hindsight, looking back, I had them all along, but I at a point, just like I lost Julie, I lost my parents. It was that tough love from afar. Because I think anyone that loves you truly and they can't help you, it's so hard to sit back and watch firsthand. But to pray for me from afar was the only option.
Right.
Until I kind of caught on and either gave myself to him or continued to tramp through the mud and the yuck all by myself, thinking I could fix it. You can't fix it. And we aren't alone. And having him as my forefront, I sometimes just slip. I use this often. You know, my husband and I, within our marriage or our friendship, because he is my friend, he's my best friend, we might slip, but we don't fall. And I think having God as that, almost like insurance policy, he doesn't allow me to fall.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like, you know, back to the word rescued. You've been rescued from the water that you were
100%.
drowning in, but you're still in the water.
I still drink the water sometimes.
But I mean,
The
it's
yuck
still,
water.
it's still there.
It is. It's a part of, I think, every day.
But you're not drowning anymore.
I'm not drowning. I
Because
will
you
never
have-
drown again.
It's
Ever.
beautiful. So, and that's what Rescued for Women is all about. It's about sharing our stories, and Megan's story is amazing because it was a mess. Her situation was a
messy.
yucky mess. But now she can give you a message of hope because of what Jesus did for her and because she finally gave herself to him. So we are just so excited that you joined us tonight to hear her story. Do you want to add anything more about
I really want to stress 100% about like my kids. That situation, it's so, yes, it's hard to talk about. I think that so many people think, well, how can she talk about it without getting emotional? When I tell you there are probably enough tears that I've cried to fill the Mississippi. And it is horrifying to think that I have 2 little girls that don't have their mom as a constant every day. My ex-husband and I keep him as close as I can, try not to ruffle feathers, things like that. I despise court. I hate what court does to children. I hate what it does to families. I hate even using the word hate, but it is a loathe that it's such a heartbreaking situation watching little people have to go through that because they are not wise enough or old enough to make a decision that literally will alter the rest of their lives. And simply, if, you know, my one message, you know, to end this with, my journey is long. It is very uphill with them, and they might be 30 until they realize, you know what, I want to know her. But keeping that door open, still sending cards, trying to show up, be as present as you can. That's all you can do. You can't beat yourself up, and I think I did for so many days, so many nights. I beat myself up, but I don't anymore. So God taking that burden and that heartbreak, it is still a very big hole in my soul, but him filling it, it's almost kind of like my cup is not half empty.
You can breathe again.
Yes,
too. Yes,
I can breathe. So you're not alone going through this, but I can, you know,
if there's a woman out there that's experiencing parent alienation or anything like that, you know, you can get through it with the help of God. Is what
that's the only way to get through it, because it's such as a mother, it's a heavy, whether you're a single mother, you chose that or you didn't. I think, you know, it's a weight that unless you've been through it, you can't imagine. I do ask, you know, sitting here, don't judge, don't hesitate either to sit with someone and ask them the tough questions and talk to them, because nobody did.
Yeah.
Everyone was
I
so
love
quick
that.
to think
Don't
that
judge, you know.
that I left my children.
Right.
Not one single second did I leave my children.
You don't always know somebody's story, even though you think you do.
And we all have one. I think that's the
Yeah.
big important. That's why we were brought here to do this.
Yeah.
You guys are not alone, and we all have a story. But
And we want to hear your story.
Yes.
That's what we'd like to do. You know, like we said before, I'll be sharing my story next time around. But we'd like other women who had yucky messes that want to come on and share their message of hope and how God helped them through their mess to come on and reach out to us. And,
Yes.
And
so hit that subscribe button and state the email.
Sure,
Email.
yeah. rescuedforwomen@gmail.com. You can reach us there if you need anything, prayer, you want to share, and know that we care.
We care.
I know, kind of corny, right?
It's
But
okay.
it's good. So, absolutely, we will see you the next time.
Wonderful.